My nephew had reached out to me. He earned an associate's degree from the College of Staten Island, and he was working as a caretaker for kids with intellectual disabilities, which is great, but it doesn't pay the bills in New York City. And he was like, are there any opportunities out there for me in trades? And I said, you know what? Are you willing to go to Eastern Kentucky for 5 months? I know a great program. He's like, Eastern Kentucky? I was like, yeah. He wanted change, right? He wanted to find a career. And so he agreed to do it. I went through 5 months in training, graduated in July, and he's now a robotics technician in Cincinnati. And he's going to take advantage of his employer's tuition reimbursement program and pursue a degree in engineering. He wants to be an engineer.
Okay, Danny, tell me about today's interview.
All right, so today on the podcast, we have lined up Darnell Epps. Now, Darnell is one of the most interesting people that I've ever met so far. So a little bit about his story. He spent 17 years in prison, studied law while he was in prison, was accepted to Cornell and Yale Law School after being released in 2017, got a degree in the trades from Lincoln Technical Institute while at Yale, and now is a founder of Thurgood Industries, which is basically a blue-collar platform that connects aspiring technicians or blue-collar workers to companies. So I'm super excited for today's conversation with you.
Yeah, what a unique background. I don't know, you might be the only person in the world that's went to trade school and Yale and graduated both.
Yeah, and he's speaking of like an interesting dude, I had the opportunity to have dinner with him last night. And you talk about a humble person who's connected and just smart overall. That's definitely him. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about business and his work in the industry and Thurgood Industries. But yeah, I'm excited for this conversation.
What a great story this is going to be. This is PodCrash. How could you give us like an unabridged kind of quick version of teenage you to where you are now?
I graduated from Yale Law School 2024, and I'm also a machinist. I was trained as a machinist. I enrolled at Lincoln Tech while I was in law school, which many of my classmates thought was crazy, but it was precisely because I wanted to tackle this problem around the skills gap. And
You might be the only one on the face of the earth, right, that's done that. You think? It's law school and trade school.
Yeah, but there's more of a backstory to that. Like, some folks don't know that, I was someone who grew up in New York City public housing. I dropped out of school in the 10th grade. My trajectory to the Ivy League was not the traditional one, right? I ended up in the prison system in New York, where I spent 17 years inside a maximum security prison before I ever, enrolled in college formally on the outside. Came home as trained paralegal, and I matriculated at Cornell University in 2017. I was accepted. But there's a long journey that preceded that, I can talk about at length. It's the long version, the short version, and a somewhere in between version. But it was a time in my life where I really discovered myself, came to deepen my faith, also, find a new path for myself and my family with the support of my family, my mother, my father, my brothers. And I turned my life around.
Yeah, like I said to those listening or watching, it's definitely a unique story, right?
Yeah.
I think I had asked you, back when you were a teenager, did you have dreams of doing what you're doing now? And you said no, right?
Yeah.
But
No, I didn't, I didn't expect, even to be working as an entrepreneur in the trades or in workforce more broadly, even as a law student when I initially enrolled at Yale. But when I was a teenager, it was, again, I dropped out in the 10th grade. It was, my pathway to college, I always thought was through athletics. So
Yeah.
what caused me to kind of drop out of school was not being academically qualified to play football anymore, right? I played football at Sheepshead Bay High School for the Sheepshead Bay Sharks. And, the coach always used to tell us during practice, he was giving us an opportunity to, either make something of our lives or, be part of what's out there on the street corner, right? I fooled around a bit in my freshman year and missed a couple of classes. And The coach said, look, you got to sit on a bench while the starters play until you get your grades up. And unfortunately, because it was most of my academic pursuits were rooted in sports, that was the main connector between me and school. I ended up making an even worse decision in deciding not to go back. I can't
Play football
I
anyway.
can't play
Why go to
football before
school?
I go to school. It was kind of, looking back now, I was like, I was a bit of a knucklehead, obviously to make that choice. But yeah, so I didn't have big dreams outside of maybe, playing college football someday, right? I don't know that I thought of myself as an academic. Now here I am, someone who's been published in the Yale Journal of Law and Liberation, who has, refined thoughts about jurisprudence and legal precedent, and went to the number one law school in the country. But at that time, I didn't really realize that potential, right? That wasn't a pathway that I really knew was in front of me. And it wasn't until, really, that I hit rock bottom and entered the prison system
But
that,
you came out though a changed man.
oh, totally. Yeah, I 100%. And it started on the inside, right?
And so maybe we'll jump in there. Like, what events happened in the inside that, led you to heading down the path of studying law, et cetera?
Yeah. So, at the time that I entered the prison system, there was very little in terms of college offerings, right? There weren't any, Pell Grants for incarcerated college students had been rescinded. Tuition assistance for incarcerated students had ended under the Pataki administration when he was governor of New York. So there were only a small number of programs throughout New York's 70 plus prisons that offered college. And I was at a prison, Five Points Correctional Facility, that didn't. So what I could do was earn a general equivalency diploma, a GED, and I did that my first year. I started working as a plumber's helper. I was in a vocational program, but even that you could only do for roughly 90 days. And after you get a couple of NCCR certifications, that was it. So I needed to find something to do. I needed to find something to root my time in that, didn't require me hanging out in the yard, being part of any criminogenic environment you would find honestly, in any prison. So I started to work in the law library. I applied for a job as a law librarian. I took a legal research course and earned a certificate issued to the Department of Corrections. I spent the entire day, for the most part, working in the law library. I did it for 15 years until I was released. So imagine me starting in 2002 up until 2017. I
So
worked as a
kind
law
of
librarian.
15, you left with 15 years of experience.
15 years of experience. I consider it a trade, right? Yeah, I learned to write briefs. I learned how to shepherdize cases, how to even read case law, right? It was a skill that I honed over that 15 years.
But okay, you take me and sit me in a law library and there's a bunch of books.
Yeah.
So was there somebody that trained you? Like,
Yeah,
besides just access to stuff you can read, how did it work?
great question. I always go back to a gentleman, an old timer, Harold Oglesby, who was an initial mentor of mine in the law library. He was the administrative law clerk, so he was the head law clerk at Five Points at the time, and he kind of, really taught me how to read case law, how to shepherdize decisions, and even how to write a legal brief and make a compelling legal argument. And he had 22 years in the system at the time. So here I was, this guy who had a year or two under his belt, meeting with, Harold, who had 22 years in the system, right?
Okay.
Working as a law librarian. So it's really peer-led training. There's no civilian really that comes in, or
But a mentorship.
a mentor,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
totally. Yeah.
And then you're working on, I assume there's curiosity because of your own case, but
Yeah. There was that self-interest there. Like, you want to win your appeal. I did,
Yeah.
feel like I had meritorious legal arguments to raise on appeal. So I devoted my time really to understanding the issues in my own case, reading a transcript, and then researching some case law and seeing what arguments I could advance before the appellate court that could potentially result in my conviction being overturned. That ultimately didn't happen. The
Right.
appeals process ran 12 years in my case. It went all the way from the state courts, who reviewed it twice, to the federal district courts in New York, then to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. And ultimately, I was unsuccessful, like many people. But during that time, I was able to help people who were wrongfully convicted secure their freedom, right?
So those that were in there with you,
Yeah,
you were able to help
yeah,
start to use what you were learning.
yeah. I used what I was learning. So even though, I wasn't able to get myself out, I was able to get others out,
You
right?
still remember the first one?
Yeah, yeah. The first one was a friend of mine, Marvin Forsyth, who was denied counsel on an interlocutory appeal. An interlocutory appeal is an appeal that happens before someone is convicted. So there's no final judgment. Imagine a judge denying bail to a defendant, and the defendant then files an appeal in the appellate court challenging that. That would be an interlocutory appeal. But in this case, it was an appeal brought by the state.
So you're appealing the fact that you can't get an appeal.
Right. Well, in Marvin's case, it wasn't that he was appealing that he couldn't get an appeal. He had his indictment thrown out by the county judge because the judge found the evidence insufficient. The prosecution appealed that decision.
Okay.
They didn't
Get it.
agree with the county judge. And on that appeal, he was denied counsel. So every criminal defendant is entitled to representation at a critical stage of the proceeding. In New York law, in the case People v. Garcia, had already recognized an interlocutory appeal as a critical stage. And when he came upstate and I met him in the law library, he didn't know that he was denied counsel. When I read the caption on the court's decision, it said no appearance for the defendant. And I said, Marv, you didn't have an attorney. And he's like, no, I think I did. And I was like, you actually didn't. So we spent actually 4 years litigating that issue and being ping-ponged for procedural reasons to different courts before the court ultimately agreed that he was denied counsel. They dismissed the indictment, tossed the conviction, and he had a 25-year sentence for a nonviolent drug offense, and he was now home with his family. So that was the first victory. That was with I was convinced that I was doing something good. Then there were people who were, wrongfully convicted who may have, the prosecutor withheld exculpatory evidence. So that would be like a Brady violation. People v. Hairston was one of those decisions. And that was in about 2010 out of Mount Vernon. So there were a number of decisions where I helped guys who I met on the inside earn their freedom, and even some cases where people had their sentences cut in half. So it was a very rewarding experience for me, but it wasn't just the law. I think we mentioned this earlier. I did a lot of work with the youth in Seneca County, working with Seneca County probation. My brother was the chair, who I was incarcerated with, of the youth assistance program in New York. And, we would draw on our own life experiences to help at-risk youth make better choices. And these are the youth that were in diversion programs or on probation. And every 6 months or so, we would get updates from Project Hope and some of the organizations we work with about where these kids were in life. And it was so rewarding to have that outlet, right? To know that you were doing something that was purpose-driven. And that really sustained us, right? So I had my work in the law library. I had the work I was doing within the local community, despite me being incarcerated. And then, we created mentorship programs even for some of the younger guys who were coming into the prison system at the time, before Governor Cuomo created a specific hub for teenagers. They were coming into adult prisons, and DEPA programs at the time asked us, my brother and I, to create a mentorship program. We called it PCAP, the Prison Community Awareness Program. And we would help these guys get into college programs, earn their GED. I would bring down some of the literature from my own college course that I was taking. So imagine, having a bunch of 18-year-olds in that mentorship program, and I'm bringing Christian Detroit, right? And these are kids that grew up in the projects, and I'm talking to them about social responsibility and, pathways through education. And it was moving to see some of those youth, young men actually earn their GED and eventually earn a college degree too.
So you really transformed then to start to see kind of a purpose and something you could do to help others,
Yeah,
mentor young men.
100%.
Your plans then started to shift to, if I ever get out, I'm gonna help young people and I'm gonna go to law school.
Yeah. I always felt like society was writing a script for me by me being incarcerated. It was so much that, I wouldn't be able to do, right? Like, you won't be able to be an attorney. You won't be able to, get your life back on track. Look at the recidivism rate for people who are coming home from prison. And, I felt like
Yeah, I think I asked you, like, how did that work so differently for you than
well, I would
most, but,
read these
like,
inspirational stories. My grandfather, before he passed away, he lived in Miami. He would send me the Sunday edition of the New York Times every
okay,
week. And I used to read these stories about people who were incarcerated, a couple who had gone on to law school. So Sean Hopwood, Dwayne Betts. I was like, wow, that's actually possible. Like, maybe I can do that, right? And I happened to meet a Supreme Court attorney, Joseph Margulies, a mentor of mine, through a piece of writing that I had shared on EDPA, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act. And he met a mutual friend, and he was at Giffey's coffee shop in Ithaca. He's like, who wrote this? And I was like, a guy I know, Darnell, whatever, in 5 Points. And he was like, we got to go see him now.
really?
Yeah, he drove up to see me, and then this is before the Cornell prison education program began offering courses at 5 Points, and he was like, "You need to come to Cornell." I was like, "You kidding me?" He's like, "Serious." So he really planted the seed for me there, and, yeah, I took it serious.
So there's a quote that means something to you, I think, where there's a pulse, there's a purpose.
Yes.
What's that quote mean to you?
Yeah, that was from Bishop Ronald Dewberry. I gotta give credit. He used to repeat that to my brother and I whenever we attended services on the weekend. And it means that no matter what you're facing in life, what adversity you're facing, you still have agency. You can still find purpose even in the darkest places. That is really what grounded me. I always reflected back on that saying whenever I was going through something hard. When my grandparents passed away and my brother and I had to be shackled and brought to, my grandmother's funeral in New York City. I remember at that time not having, seen the outside of a correctional facility for some 17 years, not even for a medical appointment. And now I'm looking at cars on the street, shackled with my brother. And then I go to mourn my grandmother who left and who was no longer with us.
And you probably hadn't seen her
And I
in
kind of
a
think
long time
about,
either.
yeah, and I think back on, that where there's a pulse, there's a purpose. So how do I find that purpose in what I'm doing and not succumb to, you know, pessimism? It allowed me to be optimistic, right? Optimism is really what drove me and allowed me to even believe that I could get into some of these spaces that I'm in now. So that was a powerful phrase that Bishop Dewberry shared that always stuck with me.
Yeah, optimism is powerful, even in the grimmest of circumstances,
It is.
because otherwise, then what, right? You kind of give up. Otherwise, it would
You give
seem,
up.
right?
Totally. Yeah.
So, there's so many things could ask, but I know 2017, you got free.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of joking about it because, 8 years ago, now you did, since then, law school, trade school, you got married, had kids. It's like, I said, boy, as soon as they set you free, you went out to like accomplish everything all at once.
Yeah. I compared it to like a slingshot. You're holding it back, and then you finally let it go. And it's like, phew. There was this belief in me that I can do something bigger, right? And I felt like when I had the opportunity, I had to make the most of it. You think of the Eminem song from 8 Mile,
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to repeat the lyrics and mess them up here, but yeah. So I came out in 2017 and then I hit the ground running. I enrolled at Cornell. First, I started working at the law school. as a researcher with the Cornell Center for the Study of the Death Penalty, which was a tremendous kind of leap in itself because here I am, someone without a college degree who's working among law students at one of the premier law schools in the country. And that was mainly due to, the mentorship from Professor Margulies, whose wife, Sandra Babcock, ran that clinic. And gave me an opportunity to showcase my abilities. What we try to do through Thurgood, give students the opportunity to showcase their skills. And I was given the opportunity to showcase my legal skills by briefing a case on Moore v. Texas and giving an analysis of it.
So you're able to work, you were able to do law work even though you didn't have the degree yet because of the experience, and that's how you funded your life while you were in law.
And then local attorneys and attorneys in New York City that I work with, I would write briefs, help craft legal arguments for them, and it sustained me. I was a full-time student at Cornell, and I was also working full-time, and it was tough, I probably, some of the gray hairs I have, I attribute to those days.
Too many.
There's some there. You gotta look deep. But
How long? So from Cornell though to Yale, how did the Yale opportunity come your way?
yeah, so another key mentor or champion, I'd say, and someone who believed in me is Professor James Foreman Jr. at Yale Law School, who won the Pulitzer Prize for his book, Locking Up Our Own. And I happened to meet him at a talk he was doing at Cornell University through a mutual friend, Peter Enns, who is a professor in the government department at Cornell. And I was so eager to meet Professor Foreman, not because I wanted to go to Yale, but because I had read his book. And,
Okay.
I know about his father's work, James Foreman Sr., who spearheaded SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I just wanted to meet him. He's a huge fan. And Enns was like, well, come with me to pick him up at the Marriott. And I was like, wait, you're going to pick him up now? He's like, yeah. So we went over there. That was my opportunity. Back to the Eminem song. No. I met with Professor Foreman and we clicked right there. We started talking about legal reform issues. I had just published an op-ed in the New York Times, The Prison Old Timers Who Gave Me Life. We talked about that. And here we're back at Cornell now. We take the car ride from Marriott in the Commons at Ithaca all the way to Cornell, go up the hill, and we're drinking coffee outside of the auditorium where he's supposed to speak. And everybody's in there waiting for him to come on the stage, and we're still out there talking. And then they came out and got him. He did his talk. But when he signed his book and gave it to me, Locking Up Our Own, he said, look forward to seeing you at Yale. So as Margulies planted the seed for me to go to Cornell, it takes someone being your champion, believing in you. He was that champion who then believed in me, in my legal abilities and my ability to excel at a elite school like Yale Law. And so when the time came to applying, he was a huge supporter.
It would seem to me like everything you started to dream about, plan for, however you want to put it, started to come about. Where the heck did the trade school idea come in and why?
And honestly, was unexpected. It wasn't a pivot that I would have anticipated if you asked me in 2020 or 2021.
Okay.
I was in my first year of law school, right, when, I started to do work, or my second year when I started to do work with the Law and Racial Justice Center, which is run by Kayla Vincent and Professor Foreman. And it really brought me in close contact with communities like the one I grew up in, like the projects, like NYCHA, New York City Public Housing. We were initially, through the clinic, going to build a community law library to help train people to represent themselves, right? Or how to conduct basic legal research
Okay.
in low-income neighborhoods throughout New Haven, which at the time had a 26% poverty rate and a median household income of $42,000. Most of the people in these communities worked in the food or retail service sectors at the gig economy, and they were looking for meaningful opportunities that didn't require 4 years of college, right? And they couldn't find them. And, it was at that time that I started to think more critically about, the trades being a potential pathway through my studies at Yale in employment and labor law courses. I read reports from Deloitte saying that 2.1 million jobs in advanced manufacturing are going to go unfilled by 2030 due to an existing skills gap. All these boomers were retiring and an aging workforce.
So you recognize the problem with the young people. They needed opportunity.
Yes.
And then you saw opportunity out there that they probably just aren't.
Yes.
There's no connection or no way for them to know that
Totally.
that all exists. All right, but still, in all, you wouldn't have to go to trade school to start to.
Well, yeah. So I that's it. Then the pivot became more concrete when I had met Matt Blodgett, general partner at that Praxis Ventures, as well as Jacob Ruttenberg, general partner at Tinicum Venture Partners. So Tinicum, the Ruttenberg family, or Darrell Ruttenberg, was Jacob's grandfather, and part of Yale Law School is named after him, right? The cafeteria, actually, Ruttenberg Hall, it's called. And Tinicum has a portfolio, hundreds of manufacturing companies throughout the U.S. And he was talking about, the shortage of entry-level skilled technicians at Penn Engineering, at Watlow, at Dexter, and all these other portfolio companies. I met Matt Blodgett at a dinner, who is a general partner at a venture capital firm that invests in startups at the intersection of IT and manufacturing. So I've seen opportunities here to potentially build a company as an entrepreneur that help tackle this problem.
Okay.
But at the same time, I didn't learn a trade. When outside of like the plumbing class that I took when I was at 5 Points, if something broke when I was living in the housing projects, we called NYCHA to come fix it. It wasn't like I was fixing a broken trap or
Right.
anything like that. So I really wanted to understand, because manufacturing, we were initially looking at advanced manufacturing, right? Machining, those technicians. So I really wanted to understand the skills that employers were looking for. I wanted to explore whether VR or augmented reality could potentially provide free skills training opportunities to folks for some of these careers. So I needed to immerse myself in the space. I needed to immerse myself in the problem, right? I needed to meet with more talent acquisition officers. I needed to meet with career services. I needed to get to know the students and instructors. So I wanted to enroll in trade school. So that's what I did. It was entrepreneurial, but it was a bit anthropological as well, right? It was like me, going into a community and space that I hadn't been in.
It's research, right?
Yeah, it's research. But I came to appreciate the dignity, the craftsmanship, and the hard work that people do in this space. And I also realized that there were a lack of tools that I had access to as a student at Cornell or at Yale, and many of these students didn't have access to. So I landed my first job out of Cornell because I took a gap year between law school. I landed my first job as a qualitative researcher using a tool called Handshake, right? It helped me find that job opportunity, apply for that job. But there was nothing similar to that in trade or vocational schools. And I felt like we needed to give students a better ability to showcase their talents and skills outside of a career fair, right?
Okay.
Yes. And we needed a digital platform that could be a space for the trades, a career network for the trades, for young job seekers who are looking for careers in advanced manufacturing, automotive, or construction. So that's what we built. We built.
Say this is all giving us background to why you started your company. So
Yeah,
Thurgood is your company.
Thurgood. Yeah,
And
yeah.
tell us about it. What does the company do, and
Yeah,
why is it unique? Because I think we talked about it, and I don't even know that there's a competitor.
Right.
So,
We're a career network for skilled workers. We focused on students because, by giving them more networking opportunities, we strengthen the trades themselves, and we can inspire the next generations to see these careers as real opportunities, right? So think of it like a LinkedIn, but built for advanced manufacturing and the construction trades. Resumes just, they don't tell an employer whether a student can square a block or wire a circuit, or whether they're going to know the basics on day one, right? And that's why so many job seekers and students get overlooked, right? So we provide, the ability for students and workers to post projects, share short videos, and really market themselves to employers in ways that a traditional resume doesn't. And for employers, they get access to verified talent and quality leads in these spaces where they have high volume needs. So it's a recruitment platform that, is bringing efficiencies to a space that didn't have them before.
So you're matching up companies that have a need, and real careers and young people that are looking for opportunities. Which is
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
So I've talked a little bit about the whole stereotypes around the trades and just the opportunities that young people don't know about. And I'm not anti-college at all, but it's not for everybody. Everybody, for various reasons, whether they can afford it or not or whatever, or may not like school, may not be for everybody. So my background was just small town rural America, very different than yours, which was Brooklyn, New York, right? But interesting that no different than me. Like I thought the only, anything that was ever talked about to me in school or anything is you got to go to college in order to have a good future. You thought football was your only way. Wow. Why, what's your perception on why nobody thinks about the trades as a good opportunity, and why here we are decades later and finally starting to talk about it?
I think language and framing has a whole lot to do with it, right? When I talk about the trades, I talk about pathways, right? Often, right? A pathway to entrepreneurship, a pathway and bridge to your college education. So, it's often framed as, the trades versus college, when in fact you can have both, right? Many of the companies that I met with, from Sikorsky to Electric Boat to others, offer robust or full tuition reimbursement program. So you might be a high schooler, 18 years old, just graduated. You want to earn an income now, right? You get hired as an entry-level machinist at Sikorsky, take advantage of their tuition reimbursement program. Maybe you go to UConn part-time and pursue a degree in mechanical engineering, fully paid for by your employer with zero debt, right? There are a lot of haters out there who talk about these careers. Nobody wants them.
Yeah, I get that on social media all the time. It's all, nobody wants these jobs, or of course the obvious, like, oh, leave it to a guy running a company who needs employees to go and talk about it. But I'm just talking about not just, it's self-serving. You got to acknowledge that, but it's really just, I see a great opportunity that nobody knows about, and not just this trade, but all kinds of trades. There's all kinds of opportunity I feel people don't know about.
100%.
But I get the same hate all the time. People don't want these jobs.
That's what tell that to the kid growing up in New York City public housing who has to do DoorDash to make ends meet. Tell that to the son of a dislocated coal worker in Eastern Kentucky, where I spent a lot of time, right? There are a lot of similarities between the folks in Eastern Kentucky and Paintsville and those in East New York, Brooklyn, right? When we think about economic grievances and the needs for upskilling and reskilling in those areas. So to the haters, I say, you're not the audience we're speaking to. We're speaking to a different audience here, right? I met so many people in Eastern Kentucky. I didn't mention that I did a 1-month residency at the Gene Haas E. Kentucky Advanced Manufacturing Institute, and Kathy Walker, the executive director, is an amazing leader, right? 100% job placement rate. It's not only free, but it provides a stipend to people in Eastern Kentucky to pursue certifications in robotics and machining. I was so blown away by the program, which, it doesn't just tackle the foundational hard skills for these trades, but it also offers courses on financial literacy and budgeting and everything else, really building people whole, right? And it provides a ton of wraparound supports as well. I was so blown away by the program when my nephew had reached out to me. He earned an associate's degree from the College of Staten Island, and he was working as a caretaker for kids with intellectual disabilities, which is great, but it doesn't pay the bills in New York City. He was living in Queens.
So even though it's great work, you can't live on it.
Sharing an apartment with 3 of his friends. And he was like, are there any opportunities out there for me in the trades? And I said, you know what? Are you willing to go to Eastern Kentucky for 5 months? I know a great program. And he's like, Eastern Kentucky? And I was like, yeah. And but it's going to be a different environment. And he wanted, change, right? He wanted to find a career. And so he agreed to do it, which I wasn't sure he was going to. And he earned 9 NIM certifications. He's now, I went through 5 months in training, graduated in July, on July 3rd, 2025. And he's now a robotics technician in Cincinnati, making great.
So I got a little bit closer to home.
He's not coming home. He loved it so much. He's not coming back to New York City, and he's going to take advantage of his employer's tuition reimbursement program and pursue a degree in engineering. He wants to be an engineer. So it's stories like that. When we talk about pathways and we speak to the haters, it's like, you're not the audience we're talking to. There are plenty of opportunities in the trades to advance the careers of so many people in this country who are in need of real careers. Even if you think about like college today, I think some 30% of long-term unemployment right now is made up of people with college degrees. So with AI and everything else, you're seeing changes structurally to our labor force that we haven't seen in decades. But these careers, I always position them as AI proof, right? It's the coders right now who are a little nervous and the welders are thriving. So these can be more stable careers for people, in addition to being pathways to a college education. There's no reason we should be pitting these two against each other. I think people can achieve both.
Yeah, I admire what you're doing, Darnell. Now, I got to be honest, it's not an easy mission.
No.
I mean, I'm well aware of the roadblocks from just tearing down the stereotypes. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much the young people, it's also the parents, because the
Yeah.
parents might think that this isn't what they want for their kids. So you have to convince parents too that there's real opportunity there. And then you've got to find a way to make it be a business to where, because you got to live too, so it can't all be charity.
Yeah.
So like admire the challenge that you're tackling. Maybe talk through that mindset. How do you think about it, or are you just going and figuring it out? Like,
No, it is a bit like herding cats, I guess, right? When you're trying to build out an ecosystem from scratch that didn't previously exist on a digital platform. I think, we found product market fit, having allies like Crash Champions, Cox Automotive, and other companies has been huge for us. Crash Champions is actually putting rubber to the ground, right? And making things happen. So,
we obviously love what you're doing, right?
Yes. And then having a robust apprenticeship program like STEP, right? That really helps be that funnel for the workforce as your company is growing, I think is incredible. And more companies need to invest in those kinds of apprenticeships and, the ability to farm its own talent, right? And I think that program is so amazing. Todd obviously running that, and he and Todd has been great and learning more about the program. When we launched initially, it was more of like me going to campus. It was a beta version of the platform. I don't even think we had a company UI built at that time.
Okay.
That was June 2024. It was me going to campus, speaking with students, telling them about the app, and creating these feedback loops so we could iterate and mature the product in a way that we thought added value to them and what they wanted, right? And then in 2024, we began, some early design partnerships with NEI General Contracting, started to work with employers, launched a pilot with Cox Automotive. And now we're in a space where we create these NFC career cards, right? Where we're getting employers to sponsor these cards that are synced to a student's Thurgood profile.
I got one in my pocket.
Yeah, we made one specifically for Matt and Crash Champions because we knew we were coming here. And, it gives employers who are doing work in this space and in need of and interested in recruiting entry-level talent to get more brand visibility with this critical audience of job seekers, right? To know when they're hot for jobs, to then engage with them and extend opportunities to them in specific geos where you have high volume needs, right? So That is our driver right now. And then, we're going to work to get more smaller businesses who are only looking to make, 3 to 5 hires a year onto the platform. But our sponsorships with enterprise clients, employers with national recruitment needs at the top of the funnel is who we're prioritizing to kind of anchor ourselves. And again, to your point, you can tackle a mission, but if you're not a business, you're going to fail, right?
So I can see the attraction as a business.
Yeah.
I think obviously that's work you have to do to go and recruit
Yeah.
the businesses. But to me, the little bit harder problem is the audience, the young people. For example, like I think these conversations start at a high school level when people are thinking about, what do I do when I get out? Do I go to college or like that's when you really start thinking about trade
Yeah.
schools or careers, and no high school is connected to, they're all disconnected, for lack of a better way of saying it. So how are you getting to that audience?
Yeah.
That's our challenge. Like,
Yeah.
like if we were to go to every individual high school in America, that'd be a full-time job for maybe 1 million people. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's a big audience and hard to reach it.
Yeah, totally. These NFC card sponsorships that we recently launched are a way to penetrate high schools and give more exposure to the trades, right? I think, we work with, there are two different public high school systems that we work with. So you have the CTE focused schools like CTEX,
Okay.
that's 17 public schools in the state of Connecticut that offer skills training in welding, automotive, aerotech.
Now, did they keep it all the way along those high schools, or are they bringing it back?
They have their system designed. So when you're in a regular public high school, you can opt in your junior year to a
Okay.
CTEC site. So these are, over 10,000 students in the state of Connecticut who are looking for careers in the trades, right?
But I don't think that that's that way everywhere, but that's
No, you
interesting.
have the Area 31 in Indianapolis. You're starting to see more of these CTE-focused schools emerge in other states. And our goal is to partner and build integrations with the career portals at as many of these schools as possible, but also to give employers more engagement with these students through the sponsorships that I mentioned earlier. It's hard work, right? It's hard work when you're, long sales cycle sometimes partnering with schools is FERPA compliance, VPAT, everything else, right? So, privacy laws and regulatory hurdles that you have to overcome before an integration goes live. But our card sponsorships are a way of us to, allow us to shorten that sales cycle so we can get directly to the students quicker. You're dealing with those two. So you have the CTE focused schools, and then you have the general public high schools where, they may take courses in construction or the trades that are more introductory. They're not like, there's no labs where they're actually machining, or they're not working on any vehicles or anything like that. But it's more exploratory. And I think with those schools, we need to find a way to better brand the trades, give more exposure to what these careers look like. So, I could think of an NFC card sponsorship for general high school where, it would be the day in the life of, an apprentice at Crash Champions, or testimonials from workers about the culture at a particular company, or people, like,
I could start to see what it looks like.
yeah, so to see what it looks like. Danny, who started off working on cars, who, is now an executive, how these can lead to, entrepreneurship, ownership, which is liberating, right? You learn a trade. Again, it is just a pathway to something greater if your heights are further down the road. So, yeah, we got to get more exposure to the students, and we're working to do that. And we have a community facing feed on our platform. So while most of the portfolios and project posts, we give students the ability to keep that private, many have chosen to share it in a community feed. And why we have a community feed is precisely to address this issue, the stigma. We want people to see what it's like to work in this space, the dignity of the work, the craftsmanship, the pride people take in this work. That needs to be visible, right? Not buried algorithmically in a LinkedIn feed where you have Bill Gates talking about some quantum, whatever, or AI, like something specifically for the trades, a digital space exclusively for the trades. And on that community feed, you're seeing more experienced technicians and tradespeople from Texas who aren't looking for a job. I think of Eddie Moore, Claude Tomlinson out in Houston, Texas, who are frequent posters. And they engage with some of the younger folks. I think Claude had a custom wrench machined from Luke in Ashland, Kentucky, and he got that done through the app, right? So we want to build out those networks. We want more experienced technicians to get on a platform and be mentors and comment on, students' projects and share some of that tribal knowledge they've acquired over decades in the field.
The mentorship, by the way, is equally a challenge that I see, because we've got guys that are great at doing what they do, but they're not teachers. Maybe they're not patient. Like, that's a challenge that we're also working on solving, because I think we're starting to see some interest from young people, but then we need mentors. And because you need the right mentors or you're not going to help them.
Oh, 100%. And I think, for leadership to recognize that is key, right? I think that's one of the things.
I wish I could do more than just recognize it and really have the answer. But we'll find it.
Yeah, when I think about like recommending that my nephew go to Eastern Kentucky, a lot of that was motivated by the fact that I knew they had some strong mentors there. So Mike, Buford, Earl, I knew that he was in great hands. These are people that could be earning six figures somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
They're decided to commit to the mission that Kathy Walker has committed herself to and her life's work to in Paintsville, Kentucky. To be a good teacher, you have to believe and help others. You have to believe in something bigger than yourself. You're doing something beyond making money, right? It's not just about the money. It's sort of like what my brother and I did in the youth assistance program. It was, and wanting to see the change in some of the youth we were working with and drawing on our own life experience. We were, driven by something deeper than just getting out of prison or something like that. We didn't even know, but they specified at the beginning, like, this will not get you a letter of support at parole. Don't think doing this is going to get you out earlier. We did it without ever getting any of that, right? We weren't driven by.
You didn't have ulterior motives.
I didn't have ulterior motives. Totally.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
2 years from now or 3 years from now, when you think about Thurgood in the mission, what's success look like?
We want sponsors for every program that with the partner schools we work with. So collision repair, automotive tech, diesel mechanics, HVAC, electrical. We need employer sponsors who have high volume needs at the entry level across those different programs, welding, machining, you name it. And then we want to get more SMBs onto the platform, more small businesses who are looking, again, to make 3 to 5 hires a year, engage more directly with students and job seekers through our NFC career cards. So the goal is to have hundreds of thousands, if not a million tradespeople. I think one of the things
I learned of millions.
I think millions. I think one of the things I learned about you, Matt, through a conversation with Danny, is how you inculcated kind of the need to think big, right?
Yeah.
You told him you got to think bigger, right? When he was interviewing for the job, and kind of took that with me last night. And I was like, I'm not going to hold back on the numbers and try and be conservative here. Yeah, we want to be the platform for skilled professionals in this country that celebrates their work and brings dignity back to the trades and helps rebrand the trades, because it's critical to our country.
Love it. I do have a curiosity though. What trade did you go to school to learn?
Machining, manufacturing, technology, and CNC machining.
Did you use it for anything? Did you make anything while you're in school?
I did a little bit. Yeah. Oh, yes. I made a gavel. I should have brought it with me today. So the first part that I machined was a gavel. And then I made
metal or wood?
Out of aluminum.
Okay.
Yes. And then we made a wooden handle.
All right.
Made a wooden handle on a lathe. And then we did a chessboard. We did a full.
Bring it today. You still carry it around?
I have it in my office.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the back. If I ever do a Zoom meeting, you'll see it.
Is it got sentimental value as the first thing
So-
you made, or what?
So the T on for our Thurgood logo is inspired by that gavel, which I machined. Yeah, it was my first project, my first NIM certification. And yeah, we made a chessboard, we made a steam engine. We did some very cool stuff while I was a student.
Now, remember at the beginning, I said like 8 years of freedom, and you've done so much already. So, including got married, got 2 kids.
Yes. Yeah.
How's your wife feel about this mission? And
My wife she's totally bought in. She's my biggest champion, because obviously whenever you're married to an entrepreneur, it's got to be a bit crazy, especially when it's an early stage startup where travel is intensive and
you're gone all the time, and how are we going to eat?
and work-life balance. Yeah. Work-life balance can be a thing, but she's really bought into what I'm doing, has always been a tremendous supporter of me. So, I want to create opportunities for my children that I didn't have, right? I want to create opportunities for other people through the work I'm doing that, I would have liked to have access to as that young high schooler at Sheepshead Bay High School, right? So it's mission-driven work, and it's hard work. But I've always grounded myself in family and my kids, right? So I would forego the happy hour socials at Yale Law School and rather go apple picking with my kids or pumpkin patches. And that's really what grounded me. I treated law school more like a job than, anything else, right? I was there, did my classes, maybe published a couple of pieces, and then, I was back home, so.
That's great. From what I've heard about today and talking to you previously, who knows where this ends up and what else this leads to and what's next for you.
Yeah.
I would bet. So
Yeah.
I bet you Thurgood does awesome, and I bet you you're on another purpose that you happen to bump into along the way.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
what seems to be the pattern for you.
Yeah, it's been adventurous. I have a memoir that will be published at some point, and I hope to bring attention to my own journey, inspire others, also my founder's journey, and it's been a tremendous adventure for me, and the chapters are continuing to be written.
Well, you learn the skill of writing, so you probably do pretty good at those, right?
Yeah.
Look forward to reading them.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah.
We're all about championing people here. And so we always close it with a chance for the guests to, if there's somebody they would like to champion right now, well, you got the microphone and camera on.
Great question. Yeah. So family would be the first champ, but in my professional and academic endeavors, I would always go back to Joseph Margulies, who has believed in me probably when no one else did in my potential, and I could never forget all he's done for me to help position me to be who I am today, and I give him tremendous credit in that sense. But family, obviously, number one. But in the professional and academic arena, I got to give Joseph Margulies, Joe. If you're listening, tremendous credit to you. I still read that letter of recommendation to Yale, and it could bring tears up. So thanks for believing in me, and happy to be here.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
What an opportunity Joe created for you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Darnell. This has been awesome. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want more PodCrash in your life, which of course you do, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you next time.